I'm a 37-year-old guy who's been divorced for a year. My ex-wife, who's 36, and I have two kids, 10 and 7 years old. The kids stay with me for half the month because I have partial custody. Even though they spend a lot of time with me, I still need to pay child support for the days they're with their mom. Since I earn much more than she does, I also pay alimony on top of child support. Our divorce was far from amicable, and currently we are not on speaking terms. The decision to divorce came after numerous arguments in the latter years of our marriage, during which I felt she had become a completely different person. The tipping point was our final argument, where she yelled at me, expressing regret over our marriage. Following that incident, I made the decision to leave and subsequently filed for divorce. After our separation, she made no attempts to reconcile or even reach out to me. It's been a year since the divorce was finalized. About 6 months post-divorce, she began a new relationship, which I learned through mutual acquaintances. Initially, I felt let down by her swift move forward, yet I recognized there was little within my control to change the situation. Consequently, I chose not to address this development with her. Our interactions have been strictly limited to discussions about our children without delving into personal matters. This approach has defined our communication for the past 6 months. Despite feeling slightly wounded by her rapid progression, I acknowledged her continued dedication as a nurturing mother to our children and refrained from actions that might disrupt our family's well-being. However, a recent incident has drastically altered my perception of her character, leading me to question her suitability as a parent. 10 days ago, while on a business trip, an arrangement had been made for her to bring the children to my home on the second day of my absence, aligning with the scheduled custody exchange. Before my business trip, I communicated with my ex-wife about the necessity of her caring for our children for an additional 3 days until my return. She agreed, and I have documented evidence of her consent through screenshots of our conversation. Confident in our arrangement, I proceeded with my trip without concern. However, on the evening of the second day, an unexpected call from my son revealed a distressing oversight. He inquired about my whereabouts, explaining that their mother had dropped them off at my residence, assuming I was present to receive them. Discovering I was away, they found themselves locked out, standing in the cold, having waited at the door for 15 minutes. In response, I directed them to seek temporary shelter at our neighbor's house while I attempted to address the situation. Complicating matters, our neighbors were also absent, leaving my children without immediate refuge in the chilling weather. Our street, mostly vacant due to its novelty and the ongoing occupancy of surrounding homes, offered little solace. The only neighbors, an elderly couple living opposite us, were not at home, mirroring the deserted state of the other houses on our street. In a state of growing panic upon learning that the neighbors were unavailable, I quickly informed my son to hold on for a moment while I attempted to reach his mother. My immediate thought was to ask her to retrieve the children from my residence to prevent them from enduring the cold, especially with the risk of them catching a cold from the snow. Expecting a swift apology and her prompt action to correct the mistake, I was instead met with a response that left me in disbelief and dismay. She bluntly stated that the children were my responsibility, given that it was technically my designated time to care for them. I found myself at a loss for words, struggling to plead with her to reconsider, not for my sake, but for the well-being of our children. Her reaction was to end the call abruptly. With trembling hands, I attempted to reach out via text, hoping she might reconsider if only to ensure the safety and comfort of the children. Her reply was dismissive, citing her plans with her boyfriend and their celebration of their 8-month anniversary as her priority. By this point, more than 20 minutes had elapsed since my initial conversation with my son, cumulatively leaving them exposed to the cold for approximately 35 minutes, with no alternative shelter in sight. I had to call CPS and explain the situation to them. They were there at the location within minutes, and then they took the responsibility to drive my kids from my house to my parents' house, which is a little out of town. My kids are too young to have found their way there on their own, and they didn't know any bus routes or stuff, so they literally couldn't have gone there by themselves. My in-laws aren't alive and had passed away before my ex-wife and I even got married, and any other relatives that I had in the city, they weren't going to take care of my kids until I returned. So my parents' place was my safest bet. I also reported my ex-wife neglecting our kids and putting them in danger on purpose because by the time the cops had discovered them, they'd been sitting on the front steps of my door and were literally using my youngest son's blanket to keep themselves warm. I felt like crap. After they informed me of the state my kids were in, but felt much better after they'd been dropped off at my parents' house. They'd also placed my ex-wife under arrest for negligence within hours of my report, and I went to sleep that day, feeling vindicated as hell, knowing that my kids were safe and sound, and my ex-wife would have hell to pay once I came back. Immediately after ensuring my children were safe, I contacted my attorney to initiate proceedings for full custody, a move that would also terminate child support payments. This decision was driven by a desire to ensure the safety and well-being of my children, and admittedly, to address the negligence displayed by their mother in this incident. In the days following the event, my ex-wife and I did not communicate until I returned from my business trip. My first priority upon return was to visit my children. During our reunion, I apologized for the distress caused by my absence and assured them of my intent to prevent such an occurrence in the future by seeking full custody. This would guarantee their constant safety and presence with me. The reaction from my eldest child to this news was a mixture of relief and happiness, which was unsettling for me. I had always believed their mother to be competent in her role, despite our differences. Her actions during our marriage had convinced me of her dedication to our children's well-being, making this recent lapse all the more surprising and concerning. And even after our divorce, the kids didn't give me any reason to be concerned about how life was for them with their mother. However, after I asked why he was so happy about not having to live with his mom anymore, my son began to hesitate and said that his mom had forbidden him from talking to me about these things. I didn't like the sound of that, so I pressed on, and eventually he told me that for so long he and his brother had been having a really hard time at their mom's place because she was very strict and stringent. All of a sudden, she wouldn't allow them to have any candy or junk while they were there for half of the month, and they were forced to eat the same food every day. The kind of food that my kids referred to as sick food. Not because it's sick and a call away, but because it's what I feed them when they're sick and need to avoid anything that's too rich or heavy for their diet. So they'd be forced to eat tasteless porridge and some form of oats every single day for lunch and dinner. Only on the weekends they'd get something different, but even that would just be toast with some dip. Their mother claimed that this was all for their good health, but I don't understand how a total lack of meat and vegetables in their diet for half of the month was going to make them healthier. I also fail to understand why exactly she'd forbidden them from having candy and junk food. Recognizing the importance of a balanced approach to parenting, I've always believed that occasional indulgences, such as treats, won't adversely affect my children's health. In fact, I argue that this moderation prevents the development of an unhealthy relationship with food, potentially averting future food-related issues. This philosophy extends beyond diet to include social and personal freedoms that contribute to a child's overall well-being and development. During our recent conversations, my children shared insights into their life at their mother's home that raised concerns. They described a restrictive environment where their activities were limited to school attendance with no allowance for social engagements, like having friends over or attending sleepovers. Such opportunities were exclusively available during their stays with me. Additionally, they recounted experiences of shopping trips where their wishes for simple pleasures like toys, books, clothes, or even chicken nuggets were consistently denied. Their mother's focus was solely on her necessities, expecting the children to remain silent and unobtrusive, with any deviation from this expectation met with reprimands. Most troubling was the revelation that they had been instructed not to communicate these experiences to me, explaining their prolonged silence on these matters. This directive from their mother not only restricted their freedom of expression, but also prevented me from fully understanding their living conditions and the challenges they faced while in her care. So finally, I decided to talk to my ex-wife and find out why she had been doing this to our kids. When I called her to confront her, she started off by yelling at me for calling the cops on her and reporting her. But I ignored all of that and asked her about everything that our kids have complained about. None of it added up because I paid her enough in child support to be able to afford the things my kids wanted. And yet they were complaining about never having enough not to eat, not to wear, and not even to play with. So I asked her what was going on, and she told me that she was in between jobs right now and couldn't afford to spend everything on the kids. That still didn't make sense because I was paying her alimony too, so she could maintain her standard of living. I have a decent income, and the alimony combined with the child support is also a substantial amount which she can easily live off without having to compromise our kids' standard of life. I argued with her for a while until she finally snapped and said that it wasn't any of my business what she did with her money, and then disconnected the call. Now that robbed me the wrong way, because this wasn't her money at all. It was my money that I was sending her for my kids. And she was supposed to use the child support for our kids and not for herself. I could tell that she'd been lying. So my lawyer and I decided that along with filing for full custody, we would also sue her for child abuse and neglect, since that was clearly what was happening here. The situation escalated when my ex-wife faced legal repercussions for her decision to leave our children outside in the cold, an action that led to a criminal case against her. This incident, combined with my decision to pursue full custody, underscored the severity of her actions. It's been approximately 1.5 weeks since these events unfolded. Her reaction came only after being formally notified of the legal actions against her. She reached out displaying emotional distress, which I perceived as insincere. Throughout our separation and subsequent interactions, she had not once initiated contact to inquire about the welfare of our children or express a desire to mend our fractured relationship. Her sudden display of concern seemed to be triggered not by a genuine interest in the children's well-being, but rather by the realization that she was at risk of losing both custody and the financial support that accompanied it. During our conversation, she attempted to downplay her actions as a misguided attempt to provoke me, even suggesting a plan to regain custody of the children. However, her appeals and emotional pleas did not sway my resolve. I expressed my lack of trust in her capability to safely and responsibly care for our children, given her recent behavior and the ongoing legal issues. Her argument then shifted towards a plea of financial necessity, attributing her reliance on child support to her current unemployment. This further reinforced my concerns about her motivations for wanting to maintain custody, highlighting the complex interplay of financial dependence, parental responsibility, and the well-being of our children in this dispute. And that confirmed what I already believed, that she wanted custody of our kids for the child support and not because she actually loved them. I was already disgusted by that, and I was about to hang up when I heard her friend and attorney yelling at her about how she needed to forget about the money from the child support and talk to me about the lawsuit instead. Then my ex-wife switched to talking about that instead and said that I shouldn't be suing her for something so petty because she already had a lot on her plate. She was already being prosecuted for the incident that took place while I was away, and I was also fighting her for custody. And now on top of all of that, I decided to add more to her troubles with the child protection lawsuit. She said that none of this was fair to her and claimed that I was doing this on purpose to hurt her because she had moved on in life, and I hadn't. I literally laughed at how delusional that statement was, and then disconnected the call because there was no point in trying to argue with her. I didn't speak to her after that and focused on work and taking care of my kids. I knew already that my kids weren't going to go back to living with their mother at any cost, and I wasn't going to continue the child support payments either. So I've been looking for babysitters for when I'm away at work, and they need to be looked after. As of now, my mom's living with me so she can take care of the kids until I come back from work. Yesterday, I received a call from my mom while I was at work where she told me to hurry back home because my ex-wife was at the door and was refusing to leave without speaking to me. I couldn't just come back home because I was in the middle of a workday and I had a meeting to attend. So I told her to put her on the phone with me. In response to her continuous and distressing behavior, I conveyed to my ex-wife the serious implications of her actions, including the potential need for a restraining order if her erratic behavior persisted. This, I warned, would only exacerbate her current predicaments. However, rather than addressing these concerns, she shifted the conversation to lament how my actions were purportedly devastating her life, appealing for compassion and urging me to retract the lawsuit to alleviate her mental and emotional strain. She outlined the overwhelming pressure she faced from the criminal charges, the impending custody battle, and the lawsuit, all converging within the same time frame. Meanwhile, I had already made arrangements with my workplace to accommodate the need for intermittent absences due to court appearances, ensuring that my professional responsibilities would remain unaffected. Her financial and time constraints, particularly her current unemployment, were highlighted as major obstacles in managing the legal challenges. She argued that her inability to afford legal representation and the requirement to attend court proceedings were unduly burdensome. Yet, when she dismissed my plea for assistance during the incident with our children, citing it as solely my problem, I found myself echoing her words back to her in our current situation. I reminded her that the consequences she now faced were the result of her own actions, thereby making it her responsibility to navigate these challenges, much like she insisted I do in our prior encounter. I'll concede that I said that purely out of spite, but I really think that it was mostly because of how she'd been treating me and the kids ever since the divorce. And I couldn't just let it slide. Every single time she had alimony payments coming in monthly, along with the child support, and in spite of that, she deprived my children of a good home environment and scared them into not telling me anything about it as well. I think I've been totally fair in suing her, as well as trying to get full custody because she'd been selfish, dishonest, and a failure of being a mother. So my being rude to her should have been the least of her concerns, but she just started bawling on the call like a baby and said that I was being horrible to her. She claimed that it was bad enough that she was going to lose custody of her kids. She didn't even think she stood a chance, given the circumstances. But on top of that, I was going to go the extra mile to sue her as well. And she said that it wasn't fair. I've been feeling really guilty about it, even though I did tell her on the call that there was nothing that could be done, now. AITA for suing my ex-wife for neglecting our kids, even though she was already facing charges and also had a custody case to deal with. Update 1. Hi everyone, 2 days have passed since I posted here, and I have come to the conclusion that there's no reason for me to feel guilty. Thanks to you guys and also my parents, who convinced me that I was doing the right thing. I'm sure now that the funds that I've been sending her for the kids were not being used for them in the slightest, and she was spending it all on herself. She and I don't follow each other on social media, and I'm not exactly in touch with our common friends on a regular basis because of my work. But after I posted here and talked to my parents about this, I decided to discuss this with a couple of my friends as well. The insights shared by my children hinted at a lifestyle incongruent with the financial struggles my ex-wife professed. Observing her frequent absences, particularly during weekends and some nights, raised questions about her true financial situation and priorities. The children's revelation that she left them with neighbors or relatives while she was out further fueled my suspicion. Their hesitance to discuss these matters openly suggested they might have been instructed to keep these details from me, hinting at a deliberate effort to obscure her lifestyle and activities. Recognizing the potential significance of this information, I made the difficult decision to set aside my principles regarding respect for her privacy post-divorce. Initially, I had unfollowed her on social media to honor her autonomy and space, a decision I began to question in light of recent developments. Resorting to indirect methods, I accessed her social media profiles through a friend's account. What I discovered starkly contrasted with the image of financial hardship she presented. Her profiles were laden with photographs showcasing a vibrant social life. Parties at clubs, beach outings, and romantic vacations with her boyfriend, all seeming to involve significant expenditure. These posts contradicted the narrative of financial distress and inability to afford legal representation she communicated to me. This revelation prompted a reevaluation of my understanding of her situation, suggesting that her claims of financial struggle might not fully reflect her actual financial status and lifestyle choices. It looked nothing short of a social media influencer's feed. And I was shocked because from whatever she told me, I thought that she'd been struggling with money and all her bills, but it didn't show on her social media or in her lifestyle at all. My friends told me that they didn't talk about this to me because they didn't think it was their place to say anything or make a comment. And I don't blame them because I think I sort of distanced myself from all my old friends. After the divorce, my ex-wife and I had been dating since college, and all our common friends were from college, so whenever I'd hear from them, I'd be reminded of her, which is why I pushed everyone away. And that clearly didn't work out well for me, but I'm getting back to them now anyway. Now I know that the whole thing was a lie, and she just wanted more and more money out of me. She was also willing to force feed our kids absolute crap and treat them badly just so she could save money instead of spending it on them like a total miser. I don't feel even an ounce of guilt anymore because she totally deserves everything awful that's happening to her right now. She's a horrible human being, and I'm no longer going to let myself feel bad for her anymore. Not after what I found out just now. Update 2. Hi folks, thank you for all the comments on the post, and also the updates. I'm very thankful for it. My ex-wife and I are currently in the middle of the lawsuit, and we have our second hearing scheduled for the day after tomorrow. She gave up on the custody battle pretty quickly and said that she was willing to terminate her parental rights because she couldn't afford to pay her lawyer for all 3 cases. So now the kids are fully under my custody, and I can finally breathe freely without worrying about what's going to happen. As for the lawsuit, it's pretty much going in my favor. The unexpected contact from my ex-wife's boyfriend added another layer to the unfolding situation. His intention might have been to garner my sympathy by sharing their difficulties, yet it had the opposite effect, heightening my frustrations. This interaction underscored my perception that my ex-wife was prioritizing her relatively new relationship over the well-being and needs of our children, a stance I found deeply troubling. The decision to record the call, made in anticipation of potential threats, proved insightful as it revealed their appeal for me to halt the legal actions. According to him, my ex-wife had been exerting considerable effort to sustain herself, our children, and him through freelance work, a field known for its unpredictability and financial instability. This portrayal of diligence and struggle, however, starkly contrasted with the lifestyle depicted on her social media accounts, which showcased frequent social activities and expensive leisure pursuits. When confronted with the discrepancy between claimed financial hardship and visible expenditure on leisure and trips, he could not provide a satisfactory explanation, only suggesting that these displays were not reflective of their actual financial situation. Furthermore, his admission that my ex-wife was also financially supporting his education, allegedly from her savings, introduced additional complexities to their claim of financial distress. This conversation not only failed to elicit my sympathy, but also reinforced my concerns about my ex-wife's priorities and the authenticity of her claims regarding her financial struggles. The disparity between the narrative presented to me and the evidence of their lifestyle choices has only solidified my resolve to pursue the best interests of our children through the legal proceedings already underway. When I heard that, I hung up and blocked him, because now everything was finally adding up where all the money was going, and why my children were being deprived of a good life, even though I'd been paying child support regularly. She's going to have to pay for this in court, and I'll make sure of it. Update 3. Hey guys, long time no see. Thank you for all the concern and for asking about me. I'm doing a lot better now, and so are the kids. They seem very happy here with me and hardly ever talk about their mother now. She lost the case, of course, and now she owes me a ton of money so she can no longer fool around with her boyfriend and her friends, which was weird anyway, because this is a woman in her late 30s with 2 kids, so I don't even know what she was thinking. Blowing all her money at clubs and on vacations. It was ridiculous, but I have nothing to do with her anymore now. Once again, thank you for all the love and support.